Hey everybody, I'm Doc and welcome back to another edition of Doc's Boneyard. Well, before I get started, I just want to throw out a quick question. If you heard the Comfortably Numb podcast, have you recovered from it? Yes, I got some initial feedback that said it was kind of medical easy. Yeah, it kind of was medical easy because I kind of had to identify parts of the brain and, kind of tell what the hell I did. So, be back in just a few minutes after these commercial messages, and we're going to jump headlong into this one. Hey everybody, it's Doc from Doc's Boneyard. Hey listen, mental health is no joke, and the struggle is real. I'm joining forces with Roman Rozelle, a veteran of U.S. Army Special Forces, to help promote mental health awareness. To quote Roman, I wrestle to save lives, including my own. Proceeds from this shirt go to benefit the Special Forces Association Chapter 38, who help many families in their invisible wound struggle. Now you can get yours today by going to collarandelbowbrand.com. That's collarandelbowbrand.com. Just type in the word Roman, R-O-M-A-N, in the search tab. I'm proud to support Roman, and I have this shirt, and I wear mine proudly. You can also find the link at the Boneyard 2021 on Facebook. All right, sports fans, I gotta pay the bills, to keep this program on the air. So, I'm gonna throw out the mantra. And what is the mantra again? It's a safe zone, but not a comfort zone. Why am I starting out with that? Well, because this is a touchy subject that we're going to jump into this week. And it's a personal subject. It's something that I'm well acquainted with and have been doing for years. And I'm not ashamed of it either. It's called therapy. Oh, shit. Yes, Doc is getting all touchy-feely. And before we really even get started, I'm going to dispel some heinous shit that's out there. No, therapy does not mean you're crazy. Therapy does not mean you're weak. Therapy does not mean you can't handle your shit. All therapy does is give you a way to figure out what the hell your shit is and maybe then come up with a way to deal with it. So how about that? And let's face it, there's as many different types of therapy as there are individuals. Yes. There is musical therapy, there is art therapy, there is, whatever the hell you like to do kind of therapy. But there is also different types of psychotherapy, and basically what that is in a nutshell is basically having you talk through your problems and come up with a solution. And that's really all what therapy is it's problem solving and finding a better solution than what's going on presently. And I could just see those skeptical eyebrows going up now. Well, I don't need therapy. I can handle it myself. Well, great. If you can, then this podcast doesn't pertain to you. But I surmise that we all need therapy. Some sort of therapy at some point to handle life's heinous shit. Heinous shit is unavoidable. It's like that stink from a bad burrito turd the night before. You just can't avoid it. It's going to come stinking up your life some way, somehow, some shape, some form. Probably in a form of a big floater that kind of just sits on top of the toilet bowl before you flush it. Or maybe that big butt explosion that just covers the whole back of the crapper. Well, I think you get the point. And what's the point? Shit happens. Not fecal matter type shit. Yes, that happens too, but life. Life happens every day, whether we want it to or not, whether we're ready for it or not, whether we think we can handle it or not. Most oftentimes we do handle it to some certain extent. Yes, we do handle it, but it's the way in which we handle it that can either come back and bite us in the ass later or be beneficial. And we're just going to kind of talk about some of this stuff. And like I said, this is all from my personal experience. And before I get into it, I just wanted to throw in a quick disclaimer that I am not a licensed clinical psychologist, medical doctor, or licensed therapist. And this is for advice only and not meant to diagnose and or treat any such issues. All right, now that I've thrown out the Whiskey 901 Studios get out of jail free card, we're going to jump right into it. I'm primarily going to focus on 3 different types of therapy that I have personally had over my many years of battling PTSD or PTS, whatever the hell you want to call it. My battles with depression, suicide, anxiety, all that shit that goes with it. And before we get into different types of therapies, it's important to know how the brain, in essence, processes trauma. So the brain basically goes through 4 different stages in processing trauma. And what it basically does is it continuously scans for real or perceived danger. And all this stuff is filtered through what's called the limbic system. And what basically the limbic system is the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism that causes you to act. And for those of you who listen to the Comfortably Numb podcast, well, you can kind of take a nap and snooze through this part. But for those of you that didn't, we're going to kind of get all medical easy here, and I'm going to name out the different structures of the brain and kind of talk about what they do briefly so you don't fall asleep on me. All right, here is the medical ease portion of the broadcast. So, if you look at the brain, you notice it has 2 halves, a right and a left. They're called hemispheres. No, for lack of a better word, they're just basically halves. The base of the brain is called the brainstem. Now, between the 2 halves and above the base of the brain is where the limbic system is. And it's composed of several different parts. There's the amygdala, which is basically an almond-shaped mass that basically deals with emotional responses and hormonal secretions and memory. Conjugate gyrus is basically a fold that's involved with sensory input concerning emotions and emotional regulation of aggressive behavior. The pharynx is basically a bundle of nerve fibers that connects 2 specific portions of the limbic system, the hippocampus and hypothalamus, together. It's kind of like the little telephone lines that go in between the 2 of those. Hippocampus, it's a tiny structure that acts as a memory travel guide. Basically sends the memories to the appropriate part of the brain where they're going to stay for long-term storage. And if you need to kind of revisit them, helps to pick them back up. Hypothalamus is the emotional center, and it controls the nucleus that makes you feel happy, angry, and exhilarated. And there's a couple of other parts, the olfactory cortex, which is basically, it deals with identifying smells, that whole nose thing. And the thalamus, which basically relays signals to and from the spinal cord and the largest part of the brain, the cerebellum. Okay, hope that wasn't too painful. So basically, your brain is constantly on alert for real or perceived threats. That whole fight or flight response. So what happens? Well, you perceive a threat. The amygdala alerts the hypothalamus to release stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, to your sympathetic nervous system. That's the basic fight, flight, or freeze response part of the brain that controls your muscles, your heart rate, your breathing, stuff basically geared for survival. And it also kicks in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is basically the automatic nervous system. It kind of keeps the body's internal parts functioning. Another word for that's called homeostasis. Then what happens is the brain reacts to the fight, flight, or freeze response. And different structures of the brain do different things. So the amygdala is basically the alarm center. That's a little ding-a-ling bell that goes off when the 911 call comes in. The thalamus is basically more or less the control center. That's the operator. Relays messages. The fornix, which we talked about, sends messages from the hippocampus to different parts of the brain to carry out functions. Hypothalamus regulates hunger, sleep, sex drive, and mood. Cingulate sulcus processes your emotions, and that kind of works along with the frontal lobe, your walking, talking, rational, decision-making part of the brain. And the corpus callosum basically connects that right and left brain, basically the right and left hemisphere, right and left side of the brain, whatever how you want to call it. Now, there's other structures that do things behind the scenes, but that's kind of a basic nutshell description of what goes on. Now, one thing to remember that the fourth part in all this is prior childhood and adult trauma elevates these responses. And it's important to know that with each prior trauma, the parasympathetic nervous system is automatically activated. And what happens when this happens? You get numb. That's basically, what that is. And that's a big thing in PTSD because it causes us to just, not feel or be disassociated with the traumatic event. So I kind of hope that wasn't too painful and too medical easy. That was kind of like the medical easy layman's version in a nutshell. But if you want to know how the brain processes trauma, that's pretty much basically it. So now we could kind of get into the real meat and potatoes. All right, so jumping right into the pond here. The first type of therapy I'm going to talk about is what's called EMDR. And I'm going to explain what the hell that acronym means. It means eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. What the hell does that mean? Well, basically, EMDR is run in stages. Now, when you first go in to meet with whatever individual who's going to perform this type of therapy, if needed, they're going to basically sit down and talk to you. They're going to get a history, kind of what the hell happened, the who, what, where, when, why, how. And it's usually going to go from your childhood up to the present. And what this does is it basically gives the clinician an idea of where your specific trauma is coming from, how it happened, when it happened, how it's affected you, what beliefs you have about yourself because of it. Say like, because this happened, I don't feel I'm good enough. I feel like I'm a failure. I feel like I'm not loved. World's not safe. That kind of stuff. Even the world would be better off without me. That kind of things that we all say and all believe when really ugly and heinous shit happens. And it's a hard pill to swallow. It is hard to sit there and go from point A to point Z and sit there and talk about all this shit. Just that in itself is disturbing. Because what it does is it brings back all those old feelings, thoughts, beliefs, and you're sitting there reliving that as you're telling this. So that just kind of sets the path in motion, so to speak. Now, what happens next is there's usually some sort of a preparation. The therapist or the clinician or whoever it is you're talking to, they're gonna want you to stay present in the moment. Now, what I mean by present is realize that you're here and now. You're sitting wherever you're sitting at, having the conversation right then and there. Your past trauma is not the present. Your past trauma was the present. Hope that makes sense. Just it's really a grounding technique, basically, and all grounding is kind of keeping your head in the game, making sure you know where you're at, what the hell's going on, kind of thing. And they also want to throw out mindful, and I'd use that word, my psychobabble favorite word, many times, and that's basically self-awareness. Aware of what the hell's going on, aware of how you're thinking, feeling, behaving, just basically paying attention to shit. Then I'll probably go into some sort of assessment, and what this does is it basically involves talking about a specific memory with questions, like the who, what, where, when, why, how. They kind of narrow down the specifics of what happened. And while they're doing that, they're going to ask you on the good old-fashioned suck-o-meter from 1, this doesn't suck at all, to 10, this fucking sucks my asshole inside out. I think you get the point. They're going to ask you to kind of grade that experience and how you're feeling then. And that's a good gauge for later on in the session to kind of see where you started, where you end up, and if there's a difference in between. Step number 4 is desensitization. Desensitization, let me throw that word out there again, because I had a hard time saying it. And like I said before, the purpose of the bilateral stimulation is more or less to take the focus off of the trauma of the event and focus it on something else. 2 things at once. Now, it's kind of a Jedi mind fuckery trick, so to speak, but you'll get what I'm saying in a second. Okay, you're sitting there, you're talking about whatever traumatic instance you choose to bring up. As you're doing that, your therapist or your practitioner or whatever you want to call them is going to engage in a practice called bilateral stimulation. What the hell is that? No, it's not a sexual thing. What it basically is something physical, like tapping your hands on your knees, snapping your fingers, drumming your fingers on the table, something to take your mind off of what you're telling them. Now, you're doing 2 things at one time. You're talking about a specific traumatic instance, but at the same time, you're also using some sort of physical activity to kind of trick your brain or trick your mind into taking the impact off of what you're saying. Does that make sense? That's where the Jedi mind fuckery comes in. So let me throw this out here again. The bilateral stimulation, or the physical, whatever the fuck you're doing, tapping your fingers, whatever, is basically to take the emotional impact off of the traumatic event that you're speaking about. Now here's where Mr. Murphy comes in, or can come in. Unfortunately, I know it's been in my experience during my sessions with this type of therapy that old Murphy will show up and say, hey fucker, remember this bad incident, or remember this traumatic incident? Something totally off topic of what we were talking about will pop up. And you're like, holy shit, where the fuck did that come up? Yeah, unfortunately, it can take the lid off of Pandora's box, and Pandora and all the other little Pandora fuckers will be running around inside your head. Yeah, that happens. The biggest thing when that happens is to kind of, slap them little fuckers around, catch them, put them back in the box, and say, not today. We're going to concentrate on this. And you kind of get back to what you were talking about. Now, the 5th part of this process is what they call installation. And installation, what that basically means is they're trying to install positive beliefs about yourself and the effects associated with the memories. Like stuff like, I am safe, I am worthy, there's good everywhere, maybe the world's not as fucked up and as dangerous as I thought it was. Those type of things. While this is going on, your clinician or whoever is running the session is going to kind of do what they call a body scan, and that's basically paying attention to any unwanted psychological ongoing symptoms that are also going on with the session. Just another little Jedi mind trick kind of thing. Closure is the 7th step, and that's returning to the safe session. You've been sitting there for almost an hour spouting out this dramatic and heinous shit. Well, now it's time to focus back on the here and now and the present, and realize that, okay, that shit is in my mind. As real as it is, it's not happening at this moment. So it's kind of a talk down, more or less, talking you off the ledge. Kind of getting you to a semi-normal homeostasis, I guess, or state of normalcy. And when I say normal, that's kind of a misnomer. It's your normal, whatever you're currently used to. And next comes reevaluation, and this is not a one and done type deal. Now, this goes on as long as it takes to tell your mind to lessen the emotional impact of what had happened. Now, it is not meant to replace those traumatic memories with something warm and fuzzy. Now, that's not the point of this. The point is to take the emotional impact and lessen it over time. Now, you will still always have that experience, but it's the emotional impact that affects your day-to-day activities, your beliefs in yourself, the way you feel, that type of thing. And, it would be nice if it's a one and done type deal, but, face it, our brains just aren't wired that way. When we're ready to let go of the emotional impact of the trauma, it's going to happen. And unfortunately, there's no textbook answer as to how long that's going to take. The biggest factor in that is honesty. The more honest you are with yourself, the more of a breakthrough you'll have, and the sooner you can get on with other shit, quite honestly. Now, EMDR therapy is effective therapy, but it doesn't work for everybody. And that's okay. There's other avenues to explore out there. It's not just you try one thing, it doesn't work, you're fucked for life. No, that's not the way it goes, folks. There is always other options out there. And I'm going to throw in some musical meat on this sandwich here and let some of what I just said sink in. So I'll be back after this little musical interlude.
see your true colors inside your ugly like me. I can see through you, see to the real you.
That was Outside by Stain, and it's off the Break the Cycle CD. And I kind of think it's a cool tune because if you listen to it and if you put yourself in a two-person perspective, that's a guy looking to the inside from outside himself, kind of sets up the next segment. All right, getting back to the meat and potatoes here. The next form of therapy I'm going to talk about is actually a part of a type of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy. This is a sub-therapy, I guess you'd call it. It's called cognitive processing therapy. What is it? And again, that's where you come up with your to understand the way we think, remember, and reason about the related tragedy or related trauma. The cognitive basically refers to the way we think, remember, and our belief system about the trauma. So that's basically cognitive processing therapy in a nutshell. Now, what are the goals of processing or cognitive processing therapy or CPT? Improve symptoms. Duh. Improve anxiety, depression, guilt, shame, and hopefully raise your daily quality of living. So what's it consist of? Well, basically it's a 12-session therapy. Now, on a personal note, I did all 12 sessions. Now, I did those in a one-on-one environment, just me and the therapist, and I also did them in a group environment with other veterans. I went to a PTSD program in Chicago in 2018, and it was a pretty intense program. Basically, we did 12 weeks worth of work in 2 weeks, but it was basically broken down into 12 sessions. So it kind of starts with, I'm going to throw some terms out here. An impact statement. That's kind of a no-brainer, an impact statement. What the hell happened? How did it affect me? How does it change the way I feel about myself? How does it change the way I act? Those type of things. Stuck points are negative beliefs about ourselves, things that we just can't get past. Another component is the ABC sheets, and I've learned to hate these fuckers. And basically, it is a piece of paper that's blocked off into 3 different sections, A, B, and C. And what it is you, based on your impact statement, you basically say how it changed your beliefs, how you felt, and I'll give you an example. My impact statement was about the shoot or no shoot situation that I found myself in 2004 involving the 2 children. It's how I looked at myself afterwards, and it's basically a tool that we used to break down how I think, felt, and my personal beliefs about myself because of that. And I'll go into ABC sheets a little bit later. But basically, you start with session 1, and that's basically PTSD, symptoms, association, education, description of therapy, and writing that impact statement. Yeah, that was a bitch. Having to sit there and rewrite that experience after all those years. Session 2 is basically the meaning of the event and the introduction of those ABC sheets. And basically what that is, it's an intro into the relationship between your thoughts, feelings, and behavior associated with that event. That's the whole crux of the ABC sheet thing. Session 3 is more or less an identification of thoughts and feelings that focus on assimilation, and assimilation is basically becoming familiar with stuck points. And like I said, those are statements about yourself or others that are negative. They're usually exaggerated, and they can be extreme. Like, the world is a dangerous place. I'm a monster. Those types of things. Yeah, you're introduced to a technique called Socratic questioning, and that actually came from the philosopher Socrates in 399 BC, and he basically developed a way to have a conversation using questions that are focused on open-ended and encourage reflection. It's funny, these questions are basic Jedi mindfuckery that don't let you off with a simple answer. They are questions that are designed for you to go into some sort of an explanation about that. So, yeah, they are probing questions, the who, what, where, when, why, how types of deals. And basically what the purpose of these questions are is to get you to challenge your thoughts and your feelings and basically your beliefs about yourself in a positive way. Like, am I really that monster I thought I was? Am I really guilty of that? Those types of things. Session 4 was a ball buster for me. And like I said, I did this in front of a group of veterans in July 2018 at the Road Home program given by Rush Hospital in Chicago. And this is where you in this program, I actually read this impact statement in front of a group of veterans. And what that did is it allowed them to ask me questions that basically made me think about the situation in a way that maybe allowed me to change what I'd been thinking, feeling, and how I saw myself because of that situation. And I guess it allowed me to see the negativity and the misguided way that I've been doing it. So basically, Session 5 is more or less rewriting your impact statement, and you're hopefully starting to challenge the way that you think and behave as a result of reading your first impact statement in front of in my case, a group of veterans, and have them ask those challenging questions. And as a result of that, the change actually took me several months to start after I left the program in July of 18. I guess it wasn't until maybe December. When, it was December actually, until I actually started to notice the change. And I'm not saying that to scare you off. I'm just saying that was my personal experience with it. There's no answer as to how long it's going to take for you to feel that shift in thinking or feeling. Session 6 is basically a bunch of challenging questions. Session 7 is basically identifying what's called the patterns of problematic thinking. And there's basically 7 components to this. The first one is, obviously jumping to conclusions. The second is exaggerating, blowing things out of proportion, or minimizing, which is, shrinking the importance of. Ignoring parts of the situation. That's step number 3, or component number 3. Component number 4, oversimplifying. Everything is good, bad, right, wrong. Doesn't deal with the gray areas. Number 5 is overgeneralizing. Seeing a negative event as a never-ending pattern. Associating everything in that negative connotation. Mind reading. Assuming people are thinking of you negatively when they have no reason to. And 7, emotional reasoning. Using emotions as proof. Like, I feel fear, so I must be in danger. Session 8 deals with safety issues. Session 9 deals with trust issues. Session 10 deals with control issues. 11 deals with self-esteem issues, how I feel about myself as a result of the trauma. And 12 is intimacy issues and basically, the meaning of the event. I'm going to take a break here and throw in some. You're not afraid of a big kick in the balls if you're a dude, or kicking that soft little furry sweet spot if you're a woman. Yeah, cognitive processing therapy is for you. I got to tell you, it's not easy, but it's worth it. The payoff is worth the pain you have to go through. I'm living proof of that. Going to take a quick pause for the cause here and throw in some commercials. I'll be right back.
Hey Doc's Boneyard fans, did you know that you can now get officially licensed DBY merch like hoodies, tanks, long and short sleeve tees, phone and laptop cases, and so much more? Visit my merch store, The Boneyard 2021, at teepublic.com. That's teepublic, T-E-E public.com. Looking for that unique, handcrafted, one-of-a-kind gift? Check out Dee's Unique Designs on Facebook. She specializes in custom artistry from paintings to jewelry, coasters to tumblers, and everything in between. That's Dee's Unique Designs on Facebook. Give her your ideas and watch them come to life. Hey everybody, it's Doc from Doc's Boneyard. Hey listen, if you're in the Fayetteville, North Carolina, especially around Fort Bragg, and you're looking for that hard to find military badassery gear, why don't you go see my buddy George at Silverback Military Surplus. He's located just outside the Yadkin Gate, 6477C Yadkin Road. He has a wide variety of patches, hats, tactical gear, you name it. Tell him Doc sent you.
All right, I'm back. The last type of therapy I'm going to talk about in this episode is cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, I mentioned that term before in respect to cognitive processing therapy. It's kind of a blanket term. But going into this specific type of therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, basically what it is short-term behavioral treatment used to help problem solve and change behaviors. And it basically deals with the relationship between your beliefs, your thoughts, your feelings, and behaviors. And believe it or not, all that shit's interconnected. You may not believe it is, you may not think one affects the other, but if you go through the therapy, you actually understand why it happens. And basically there's several core principles. And basically, the first core principle is psychological problems are based in part on faulty, unhealthy ways of thinking. Now, by saying in part, let me explain that. We have psychological problems, depression, anxiety. There can be physiological causes, serotonin levels, that type of thing. Now, what they're talking about is our part in all that, in how we perceive our beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, not something organic. B, psychological problems are learned patterns of behavior. Third core is developing better coping strategies. Now, what are the treatment strategies of cognitive behavioral therapy? Well, I guess the most important one is to learn how to recognize one's distortion in thinking and rediscovering ways to reevaluate that. And another treatment strategy is to gain a better understanding of others' behaviors and motivation. I think that's kind of important. How about problem solving? Sense of confidence in your abilities. How about facing your fears, not just running away from them? And you can do that by role playing. That's a good therapeutic tool. To have that playing, you pretend. You pretend. You have that pretend conversation. You're acting, basically. You're getting your acting chops in. And different types of relaxation, different types of relaxation techniques are explored. And this is not a long-term type therapy. This is basically a short-term therapy used, like I said, to identify problems with the way we believe, the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we behave. And if you think about it, it's really not rocket science. It's more or less mental common sense. But the common denominator in all this is there has been a traumatic event, or many traumatic events. And this is where all this heinous shit stems from. This is where, all that shit that crawls out of Pandora's box, well, now you know where the fuck it came from. The coolest part is, though, you can catch all those little Pandoras, beat them in the head with a fucking hammer, and kill them. Be done with them. Move on. That's the cool part of it. I know I threw out a lot of information in this podcast, and I've done all this shit myself over the years. Yes, many, many times I have done all these therapies and all these steps, did all this work. I want to thank you for taking your time out to listen to me. And I'm going to throw my catchphrase out there to ramble on incessantly. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, whatever, drop me a line at theboneyard2020 yahoo.com. That's theboneyard2021 at yahoo.com. Also, stop by and follow my Facebook page, The Boneyard 2021 on Facebook. Drop me a line on there also. I post updates about the show, live broadcasts, that type of thing. Also, I'm still working on that live DBY radio thing. So I'll post updates on the Facebook page about that also. I'm going to close with a really awesome tune by Creed. It's called Time. Remember, it's not the fat, the meat, the gristle. It's just the bare bones, folks. I'll see you next time.
Explain, can't quite put my finger on the difference that makes us so different. We've said everything, our words only betrayed us. Nothing is left, nothing was left unsaid. This time I have nothing left to lose. I'm stuck, the second hand won't move. It's about time that I speak my mind. It's about time I find pieces of me I